directed by Burt L. Gordon. We are talking Food of the Gods. This is a 1976 movie that stars Marjoe, Gortner, and it's based off a story from H.G. Wells, although apparently influenced by Jules Verne as well. So a 1976 kind of B-movie about giant creatures. What's the story? Well, it focuses on this small Canadian island, which is kind of somewhat of a rural community that lives on there, and there is some substance which is bubbling up from the ground, and a local couple literally think it's food from the gods because they have mixed this substance with chicken feed and fed it to their chickens, who have grown to massive size. And it's all well and good because, you know, they're more meat, bigger eggs, etc. But it turns to trouble when various pests end up kind of getting in the same feed, including maggots, wasps, and primarily rats, all of which grow to ginormous sizes. And then we have a group of various people who are essentially kind of trapped on this kind of island, harassed by these giant creatures. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So, a mid-70s creature feature movie, and I mean, this one maybe hasn't stood the test of time in regards to its kind of VFX. We'll talk a little bit more about it, because I do think there are some things to kind of to sing wax lyrical about, but you know, you've got to bear in mind, for example, this was the same era that Jules was made, albeit this is kind of clearly a B movie. What can we say that works in this movie? I mean, in regards to the effects, I mean, we'll talk about them again, but there is some kind of like practical puppets that were made, which I think actually look good. And these are generally kind of where you see the heads of creatures like attacking our actors and things like this, and we see a couple of like full-size like bodies once they're killed and things, which I have to say, and again, you're remembering this is a mid-70s movie, I think those effects look okay. It's quite a kind of a fun sort of, you know, adventure film to a large degree, with, you know, lots of kind of like people in peril, people getting kind of ambushed by various instincts. One of the aspects I liked about it is you kind of the primary kind of antagonists are these giant wasps, which are kind of dealt with relative ease, and it's after that you'll get the kind of the greater risk of the giant rats, and even you have a small little kind of altercation with a giant hen before both of those. So the kind of the way the movie kind of works is you have like progressively more difficult kind of animal encounters as the film progresses, which I thought was an interesting idea. When you kind of like they deal with one issue with one particular kind of animal group, and then deal with a kind of a larger issue, if that makes sense. And I primarily rats is the kind of the biggest threat here, but it is gradually an increasing amount of stakes. So therefore, you know, when you're watching this film, these different creatures, you know, are essentially different or harder and harder to kind of get rid of and harder to deal with as the kind of the film does go on. So obviously the stakes kind of increase. I like the fact we have this kind of this random sort of group of kind of people, and some of them are quite weird. Our main character is like a kind of an American kind of football player, even though I got to say he looks a little old for it. But who, you know, what will we say? This is the 70s, you know. But I think a good mix of kind of different kind of like sort of backgrounds in regards to these kind of characters. We've got the greedy corporate man. We've got the kind of the locals who think it's kind of like a religious kind of like gift from heaven and things like this. The more pragmatic kind of like football player and things, a couple with a pregnant, and the wife is pregnant. There's a few different kind of situations which I thought was quite good. And despite some of the kind of the shortcomings in regards to the technical aspects here, as I've mentioned, there are some kind of okay kind of set pieces that are kind of quite fun and enjoyable to a certain degree. But your enjoyability is going to depend on how much you kind of like kind of schlocky B movies, because this one is a pretty kind of silly and cheesy movie. I mean, there's no explanation given about what this stuff is. It just kind of seems to kind of bubble up, and then it seems to have it stop, and that's all people will say about it and things like this. But the effects, I think, are going to be the main thing that people remember about this. I mean, it's largely kind of like rats running over a model house, and then you kind of got like a kind of composite shot over the top with kind of people, you know, kind of on top of it, if that makes sense. So it kind of looks a little silly at times. As I've mentioned, I do think that the practical puppets actually don't look too bad. Even by today's standards, I would think that if a film was made with those, you would still kind of get away with having it. But, you know, it's kind of like the effects are a bit of a mixed bag, and especially with the little wasps when they're attacking from the sky, they kind of look almost transparent because the kind of the composite effects doesn't quite work properly. So the effects here are silly. It is coupled with some atrocious sound effects of these various kind of giant kind of creatures, as they make weird sounds when they're attacking. They all seem to be very aggressive. It's not really explained why that is. You know, why these creatures turn so aggressive when they have this kind of concoction. I mean, we just got to accept that's what happens, I suppose. But you're not really given any kind of reason why. The acting, you know, it's a kind of cast of relative unknowns. Marjoe Gortner, as I say, I know from Star Crash, but he was never like a kind of a particularly kind of you know, well-known actor, I would say, even in the 70s. But the acting's a little bit hammy. The kind of like the characterization is, even though it's a good mix of kind of different kind of like backgrounds, you know, the characterization is a little bit kind of typical. The evil kind of corporate guy, of course, is going to get his just desserts and things like this, and his kind of own hubris and his own greed is going to be the downfall of him. It's very kind of simple in regards to its, you know, it's kind of like the way it approaches characters and stuff. I think the climax of the movie, how they ultimately deal with the threats, a little anticlimactic, to be honest with you. And some of the drama, or lack thereof, caused by the way this film was made. I mean, the direction is quite weak because it really lacks any kind of dramatic sense. Even if you were a little more forgiving with the kind of the VFX and things like that. Overall, I mean, it's an okay movie if you kind of don't mind a very kind of like silly film to a certain degree. Like I said, it's really just not one of kind of H.G. Wells' more remembered stories. Let's just put it like that. I would argue. I actually saw the trailer to the sequel of this one, which is also called Gnaw, Food of the Gods Part 2, which I think came out 10 years or so after this one. I still haven't actually seen that movie, but I always remember seeing the trailer of that second film on practically every VHS I used to rent back in the day. So this movie, I will give it a 4 out of 10. It's just not a terrible movie, but I can't really say it's a particularly well-made film in any kind of realistic sense. But it's still watchable if you don't mind cheesy movie. But it could have been more. More could have been made from this. There could have been more drama. I mean, the effects are very, 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 you know, of the time. Let's just put it like that. Let's put it kindly. Of the time. 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time.